Greetings, men and women of the interweb. Warhammer has been around for a long time, and during that time it has shaped the world of gaming in its entirety, like no other franchise in history. Today, we will explore what it is and the effect it has had on human consciousness. Let us discover. It all started during the early 80s, with grown men playing with painted miniatures in a basement, to hide the shame and social stigma as much as any other reason. Fantasy was a great way to escape annoying historical realities or being constricted by them, and gaming is always fun, so fantasy gaming was becoming particularly popular. The world of Warhammer was originally a medieval fantasy setting. Its creators populated it with an empire of man, resembling a Renaissance or late medieval Germany, surrounded by a number of human or non-human kingdoms. One of them was Bretonnia, a completely medieval kingdom filled with peasants and knights seeking the Holy Grail. Another was the Vampire Counts, and then some more Tolkien-esque races and their respective kingdoms, such as Greenskins, basically orcs and goblins, the dwarves, the elves, and finally, the realms of Chaos, which presented the biggest threat of all to the aforementioned kingdoms. A very diverse and rich setting, where every kind of fantasy could fit, and every kind of adventure involving all of the fantasy archetypes could be played out. Warhammer was a success, with so many neckbeards either playing its role-playing variant with more specialized adventures, or its infinitely more popular wargaming variant, with battles of some scale, on a carefully crafted terrain, using painted miniatures. But then something strange happened. The age of science fiction was here, with novels such as Dune finally taking root in the heart of fantasy aficionados everywhere. So then people started introducing futuristic items into Warhammer, such as laser rifles and teleportation devices. The rationalization for it was that some advanced alien race had dropped those accidentally, when its juvenile delinquents were speeding with their spaceships over the planet or some stupid thing like that. But it worked. After all, you already had a public that was convinced that having a warrior mutate in the realms of chaos, something like Chernobyl after the blast, would not necessarily kill him, but would rather make him into a tentacled, four-limbed, tall and muscular super warrior with constant erection on his now 2 penises. So I guess this wasn't such a far cry from that. People didn't know it back then, but right at that moment, with the introduction of those items, Warhammer 40k was being born. The game which would overtake its original fantasy setting by multiple orders of magnitude and become the preferred wargaming system of the world, spawning an entire library of fiction to flesh out that universe, eventually extending to a large number of video games and generally forever captivating the imagination of antisocial nerds the world over. I mean, even people who are totally not like that, such as me, are into the setting. But what makes this setting so popular? What is that secret mechanism in the heart of a man, or, indeed, even a woman, as you'll be surprised to know, which makes them want to spend a lot of money to buy their plastic crack and then spend countless hours painting little miniatures, only to be able to perform mock battles involving dice and make-believe laser beams, at the end of which one of the two would feel the satisfaction of victory and the other taste the bitter taste of defeat, only because that unfortunate orc player didn't paint his vehicles red enough. What draws them to the 40k franchise is, hilariously, realism. Yes, that's what I said. Now let me explain how I am correct. When someone wanted to get into Warhammer, there was always a choice. Will you get into the fantasy variant or the futuristic 40k variant? The reason why the vast majority of the poor souls will choose the 40k variant is because the past is the past. So, in their personal evolution, which also involves possible future personal scenarios, the medieval setting of the fantasy variant has little to offer. But the appeal of the 40k variant is that connection to a possible future, and the knowledge of its methods of war and available weaponry lies ahead in time. Someone can be in the know by playing the futuristic game, but he won't be in the know if he chooses the swords and sorcery fantasy conflicts of Warhammer Fantasy. But then the terrible question appears and fills every neckbeard with dread. Are the warlike ways of 40k in any way related to the future of warfare? Without intending to ruin the fun, I have to say not very much. You see, war seems to be changing, but towards a more cost-effective kind of war. War was always influenced by economics, but nowadays, more than ever, it is becoming a war of economics. Unmanned warfare is becoming more and more preferable. Nowadays, a geek with a drone can blow up more tanks than the best dive bomber pilot. And what's more, the geek doesn't even need to risk his life. Projecting that clear tendency into the future, one can see that the future of warfare will be almost entirely unmanned. I mean, exoskeletons and jetpacks already exist, but the frail and mortal being inside of them is just not up to par with their technology. And by the way, space marines with exposed heads are as stupid and self-defeating as plant-based meat, and chainswords are the devil's work, if the devil was inbred and retarded. But then it gets to a point where it becomes stupid times 10. I mean, what is this thing? And why isn't its designer flying first class to a penal colony on Mars? But underneath the debris of broken fantasies and crushed hopes, there is a heartwarming light still shining. It is the reason why all those overgrown kids would rather prefer war to not be a series of pressed buttons, but a valiant affair involving acts of heroism and self-sacrifice. It is because man will always yearn for that knightly pursuit which makes him overcome mortality and brings him close to the gods. Integrity in the face of mortal danger. Questing for discovering the truth. Overcoming weakness towards a stronger self. Mythical archetypes which will ring true through eternity and awaken consciousness.